He spent 50 years protecting America on screen, but no one ever saw the battles that nearly broke him off camera. Behind the mustache, the Ferrari, and the fame was a man fighting for his family, his health, his dignity, and a ranch that held every piece of his soul. This is the real story of Tom Selleck, the heartbreaks he carried, the sacrifices he never spoke about, and the quiet courage that built a life Hollywood could never give him. Some lives are shaped by applause. His was shaped by endurance. Tom Selleck's story did not begin with fame or comfort. It began in a quiet home in post-war Detroit, where money was tight, emotions were controlled, and daily life taught him lessons that would stay with him forever. He was born in 1945, just months after the world came out of a long and painful war. Detroit was a tough city during that time. Work was hard, families lived with caution, and everyone understood that life could change quickly. In that environment, Tom grew up learning to stay steady, keep quiet when needed, and work without expecting praise. His father, Robert, worked in real estate. He was not a loud man, and he did not show his feelings easily. His silence was sharp and powerful. He believed that discipline was the only way a child became strong. His mother, Martha, was caring but firm. She stretched every dollar, kept the house organized, and tried to protect her children from hardship, even when she could not protect them from the pressure of responsibility. There were no luxuries in Tom's childhood. Every purchase mattered. Every decision was serious. These years taught him something that would later define his entire life. You must stand firm, even when life is heavy. Emotions were not discussed openly in the Selleck home. Love was shown through actions, not words. A fixed uniform, a repaired shoe, food on the table. These were quiet signs of affection. Tom learned to read between silences and hold his feelings close. This emotional distance shaped him, teaching him to stay calm even when things hurt. In 1952, when he was 7, the family made a life-changing move. They packed everything into their car and drove to Sherman Oaks, California. They were not chasing big dreams. They were trying to escape the limitations they felt in Detroit. California was brighter, faster, and more demanding. The change was big for Tom. Detroit had been tough, but familiar. Sherman Oaks was warm, loud, and full of people who spoke and acted differently. Hollywood was only a few miles away, but that world did not touch him. His parents kept life simple and strict. Expectations grew higher, responsibilities increased, and Tom felt the weight of needing to succeed so his parents' sacrifice would not be wasted. School was not easy, but it gave him a sense of order. Teachers noticed he was respectful and quiet. He was not the kind of boy who caused trouble. He listened, worked hard, and stayed focused. But the world outside, school still felt heavy. He needed a place to breathe. Basketball became that place. On the court, he felt light for the first time. The sound of the ball hitting the floor, the quick movement across the court, the feeling of sweat and effort, it all helped him forget the pressures waiting at home. Basketball gave him discipline, routine, and confidence. Every practice taught him how to push through difficulty, how to work as part of a team, and how to accept mistakes without losing faith. It was his first experience of finding freedom in effort. But life is unpredictable, and at 17, Tom faced an event that changed him in a way nothing else had. In 1962, he was involved in a car crash that hit him suddenly, leaving him shaken in a way he had never felt before. One moment, he was living an ordinary day. The next, he was surrounded by the sound of metal grinding, glass breaking, and the world spinning fast and violently. He remembered the cold shock in his chest, the smell of the show's pace, engine, and the strange silence after everything stopped moving. He lay there, confused, scared, and painfully aware of how close life had come to ending. That accident did not break him. It woke him up. It showed him how fragile life was and how quickly it could disappear. When he returned to the basketball court weeks later, people noticed a change. He moved more carefully, more thoughtfully. He treated time like something precious. His eyes looked different, older, more aware. That accident marked a line in his life. Before and after. Before, he was a boy learning to be strong. After, he became someone who understood the deeper value of every second. His work on the court improved. His focus sharpened. He pushed himself harder, not for praise, but because he knew he was lucky to be alive. Coaches respected him because he showed discipline even on hard days. Teachers admired his seriousness. He refused to take anything for granted. All that effort paid off. In 1962, he earned a scholarship to the University of Southern California. This was not something he got because he was privileged or connected. It came from grit, practice, and years of pushing himself even when no one was watching. At USC, he believed he was preparing to follow his father into real estate. Acting was not even a thought, but his childhood, the silences he lived through, the discipline drilled into him, the accident that changed how he saw life. All of these experiences had quietly built a foundation inside him, a foundation that would soon lead him into a world he never planned to enter. His early life shaped his inner compass. He learned to carry responsibility without complaining, to work quietly, to endure hardship without losing himself. He learned to stay steady when life was unstable, and these qualities would become the core of everything he achieved later. But surviving the crash didn't prepare him for the storm. Waiting in adulthood, the storm that would erase everything he had barely begun to build. Sometimes a man steps into his future by accident and stays because something in him refuses to leave. When Tom Selleck entered USC, he thought he knew the path ahead. He believed he would study business, work hard, and follow his father into real estate. Acting was not in his mind at all. He was focused on earning his degree and making sure he did not waste the opportunity his scholarship had given him. Life, however, has a way of opening unexpected doors, and one day a drama coach invited him to try a class. He joined without much thought, expecting nothing from it. But the moment he stepped on that small stage, something shifted inside him. The room was simple, with plain walls and old lights, but it felt strangely alive. When he spoke his first lines, he felt a quiet power move through him. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was calm, steady, and rooted. The same discipline he had built on basketball courts now helped him focus deeply in front of strangers. The stage didn't frighten him. It gave him a new way to express all the feelings he had learned to bury growing up. People in the class noticed that he didn't try to show off. He just tried to be real, and that honesty drew attention. Slowly, acting went from a curiosity to something that felt meaningful. After graduating, he took small jobs wherever he could. Early commercials helped him earn a little money, though not much. He did ads for products like Pepsi and deodorant, and sometimes he had to do the same scene again and again until his head hurt. These small commercials didn't make him famous, but they taught him how to work in front of a camera and how to stay patient. Bit roles followed short parts with only a few lines. Sometimes he played a background character who didn't even have a name. Other times he was cut out of the final scene completely. He struggled to pay bills, drove an old car, and often wondered if he had made a mistake by choosing this path. But something deep inside him refused to give up. He wasn't chasing fame. He was trying to hold on to something that felt real, even if the world didn't see him yet. Then, in 1967, life interrupted again, but this time with a seriousness no one could ignore. Tom received his draft notice. Many young men tried to avoid service, but he did not. He stepped forward without hesitation. Serving his country felt like a responsibility, not a burden. He joined the California Army National Guard and served with the 160th Infantry Regiment. For 6 years, he trained, learned discipline on an even deeper level, and accepted duty as part of who he was. But Hollywood is not patient. In the entertainment world, being gone for 6 years is more than a break. It is an erasure. When he returned in 1973, the small progress he had made was gone. Casting directors looked at him with confusion, as if trying to remember where they had seen him before but failing. The doors he had worked so hard to open were closed again. Younger actors now filled the waiting rooms. They were fresh faces, eager, and had not lost years of momentum. Tom walked into auditions where no one paid much attention to him. He left rooms where his name was forgotten before he was even out the door. These were not dramatic rejections. They were the quiet kind, the kind where people simply look through you. Still, he kept going. He auditioned for pilot after pilot. Most never made it past the first stage. Some were filmed but never aired. Each time he hoped it would be the one that changed everything, and each time he received the same news: canceled. After hearing this enough times, most people would have walked away. Tom didn't. He folded each rejected script carefully, placed it aside, and kept searching for the next chance. Money was tight. Some nights he counted coins to buy gas. Other nights he lay awake, wondering if he was wasting his life. The loneliness of these years was heavy. He felt forgotten and invisible. But somehow he kept showing up. He believed that effort mattered even when results didn't. During this difficult period, he found a place that made him feel grounded again, of the Beverly Hills Playhouse. It was one of the few acting schools where teachers believed in his potential. Here, he wasn't treated like someone Hollywood had forgotten. He was treated like someone valuable. The training was intense. He had to dig deep emotionally, show vulnerability, and face weaknesses he had never admitted before. But the work made him stronger. It sharpened his acting and steadied his heart. Then, slowly, the world began to notice him again. He got a small role on the Rockford Files, playing Lance White. He wasn't the star, but his character had a charm and steadiness that viewers liked. Producers noticed his natural presence. It was the first tiny flame of recognition after years of darkness. It did not make him famous, but it reminded him that he belonged in this world. It showed him that his hard work could still lead somewhere. This time, people were finally beginning to say his name with interest. Casting directors remembered him. Audiences noticed him. Opportunities started appearing again, but the road ahead wasn't smooth. He was about to face a choice that would define everything that followed. And just as the world began to notice him, fate offered him a choice that would define the rest of his life and break something inside him forever. Every legend begins with a moment no one expects: one man, one role, one lifetime unfolding. For Tom Selleck, that moment arrived in 1980 when he was cast as Thomas Magnum in Magnum P.I. He had spent years waiting, trying, failing, and trying again, and suddenly the world opened its doors. The opportunity didn't just come his way, it exploded into his life like a wildfire. Almost overnight, Tom went from a struggling actor to a face recognized everywhere in America. But nothing about this rise was simple, and nothing about it was easy. Magnum P.I. became one of the biggest shows of the decade. The mustache, the red Ferrari, the Hawaiian shirts, the sun-soaked beaches, these things became part of television history. People believed Tom fit the role perfectly, as if the character had been written specifically for him. They saw the charm, the casual confidence, the humor, the courage, but what they didn't see was how hard he worked to bring every scene to life. Behind the screen, each smile, each chase, each stunt came with a cost most people never imagined. The show filmed in Hawaii, which looked beautiful on screen, but demanded a level of energy that would push anyone to their limits. Tom's days were often 12 to 14 hours long, 6 days a week, under the hot sun. The work was non-stop. There were moments when he barely slept. Sometimes he ate meals in his trailer because there wasn't enough time between scenes. He performed many of his own stunts, which meant real injuries, real bruises, and real pain. His back ached from hard landings, his knees hurt after running on uneven ground. He wore a smile, but his body carried the weight of every episode. Still, he kept going because he was grateful for the chance he had been given. This was the first major role of his career, and he wanted to honor it with everything he had. The money began to come in, and for the first time, he was earning enough to build stability for his future. Throughout 8 seasons, he made between $5 and $8 million, a life-changing amount for someone who had spent so long working for scraps. Yet every dollar came from hours of sweat, exhaustion, and pressure. While his professional life rose higher than he ever imagined, his personal life began to feel the distance. Hawaii was paradise for viewers, but for Tom, it also meant being far from his wife and stepson in California. The long flights back and forth made life difficult. Special occasions slipped by. Important moments were missed. Letters came late. Phone calls were rushed. He wanted to be a good husband and father, but the show demanded time he could not give back. Slowly, gently, and quietly, the distance began to crack the marriage he had tried so hard to protect. And then, during the peak of his success, came one of the most painful moments of his career, the Indiana Jones offer. In 1981, Tom auditioned for the lead role in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He impressed Steven Spielberg and George Lucas so much that he was chosen to play Indiana Jones. It was the kind of role that could define a career, bring worldwide fame, and secure a place in movie history. But he was under contract with Magnum P.I., and CBS refused to release him. He had given his word, and even though the situation hurt deeply, he was not the kind of man who broke promises. When he learned he couldn't take the role, the hurt went beyond disappointment. He felt the weight of what he was losing, the chance of a Faison lifetime. But he kept it inside. He didn't complain. He didn't argue. He didn't ask for sympathy. He returned to set the next day, put on the Magnum shirt, and continued filming under the same bright Hawaiian sun. While the world later celebrated Harrison Ford, Tom carried the heartbreak quietly. Only a few people close to him ever truly understood how deeply it affected him. Despite the emotional pain and physical exhaustion, Tom continued giving everything he had to the show. He cared about the cast and crew. He respected the fans. He believed in finishing what he started. That loyalty shaped not only his career but also his character. It proved that he was more than a TV star. He was a man of integrity. For viewers around the world, Magnum P.I. represented freedom, adventure, and fun. But for Tom, it was also years of sacrifice, loneliness, and private struggles. Fame can hide many things, and in his case, it hid the long nights, the missed family moments, and the quiet ache of knowing he had paid for success with pieces of his personal life. People loved him for the hero he played on screen, but they didn't see the real battles he faced behind the camera. They didn't see the mornings when he woke up sore and tired, the evenings when he sat alone in his trailer far from home, or the moments when he wondered if the price he was paying was too high. Yet, through it all, he held steady, just as he had learned to do in his childhood home, on the basketball court, and through years of rejection. Magnum P.I. made him a star, but it also pushed him to his limits. It was the role that changed everything, and it demanded everything in return. The world saw a confident hero driving a Ferrari under the Hawaiian sun. Tom felt the weight of carrying a show, a marriage slipping away, and a dream lost to a contract he honored out of principle. And while one chapter of his life rose with unbelievable force, another began to burn quietly in the background. As the world, he watched him shine. He was on the edge of losing far more than an opportunity. But as one chapter rose, another quietly burned, and the man America adored was about to lose far more than an opportunity. A man can survive failure. What breaks him is losing the people he built his life around. Long before Tom Selleck became a household name, He was a young man trying to build a simple, loving life with someone he cared about deeply. In the late 1960s, when he met Jacqueline Ray, he was still an unknown actor, working hard for small roles and holding on to hope more than anything else. She was warm, confident, and understanding, and for the first time, Tom felt truly seen. They understood each other's struggles, fears, and dreams. Their love wasn't built on fame or comfort. It was built on the quiet belief that they could create a life together, even when their world had very little to offer. When they married in 1971, there was no glamour, no big celebration, and no expensive honeymoon. Their home was small and simple, filled with second-hand furniture and patched-up walls. But it was theirs. And inside that modest space, they shared laughter, hope, and plans for the future. They made a life from scratch, relying on each other more than anything else. Those early years were humble but meaningful, and in many ways, those were the years when Tom felt most grounded. One of the biggest blessings of that marriage was Jacqueline's young son, Kevin. When Tom held him for the first time, something in his heart shifted. He had grown up with a quiet father, strict rules, and few outward signs of affection. But with Kevin, he felt a softness he didn't know he had. He loved the boy instantly, not because he had to, but because it came naturally. Being a father figure brought out a gentler, protective side in Tom. Kevin climbed into his arms easily, trusted him quickly, and gave him a sense of family he had never experienced before. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. When Magnum P.I. launched in 1980, it changed everything. The show demanded endless hours, long days under the hot Hawaiian sun, and months away from home. The very job that lifted Tom's career was the same job that slowly pulled him away from the family he cherished. At first, they tried to make it work. He flew home whenever he could. He sent letters and made rushed phone calls between scenes. But the distance grew heavier with every passing month. Jacqueline tried to keep life steady, raising Kevin, managing the home, and filling the space Tom left behind with patience. But the empty chair at dinners, missed birthdays, and the constant waiting took a toll. It wasn't anger that built between them. It was sadness. It was exhaustion. It was the slow realization that love alone could not hold two worlds together when those worlds were separated by thousands of miles and a schedule that never stopped. By 1982, their marriage had reached a point where all of them knew it was breaking. They didn't fight or blame each other. Instead, they sat quietly with the truth. They loved each other, but they couldn't hold the life they once shared. Their divorce was not loud or bitter. It was a shared heartbreak. They parted with respect, but the silence of that ending stayed with Tom for many years. What hurt the most wasn't losing a marriage. It was stepping out of the home where Kevin slept, wondering how he would stay present in the young boy's life from so far away. Life didn't wait long before reminding Tom just how fragile family can be. In August 1983, he took Kevin, still a bright, hopeful kid, driving in a multi-story parking structure. It was meant to be a simple moment between a father and son, something normal and easy. But a jammed gear shift turned that ordinary day into a nightmare. The car lurched forward with violent force and went over the edge of the third floor. Tom could do nothing but watch in horror as metal and glass crashed toward the ground. His heart nearly stopped. The sound of the impact echoed inside him like a breaking world. He ran down the stairwell as fast as his legs would carry him, hands scraping the walls, breath shaking. Every regret he'd ever had, every late night on set, every missed moment hit him all at once. When he saw Kevin alive, bruised but breathing, he broke down. The relief was so strong it almost felt like pain. He pulled Kevin close, whispering thank yous with a trembling voice. That day changed Tom forever. It reminded him that life can steal the most precious things in a single second. It reminded him that love is something fragile, worth protecting with full force. And it reminded him that being a father isn't about perfection, it's about presence, about showing up, about holding on when fear threatens to break you. From that moment on, he became softer, more patient, more present. The experience carved a deeper sense of gratitude inside him. Kevin didn't just survive a fall, he saved Tom from losing himself. Through all of this pain, Tom didn't become bitter. He became more aware, more careful, more connected. He learned that sometimes love becomes clearest when it is almost taken away. The near loss of Kevin opened his heart wider and shaped him into a man who understood the true weight of protecting the people he loved. It prepared him for the man he would need to become later in life. But just as life closed one door, a quiet miracle was already waiting behind the next curtain. Sometimes love doesn't arrive to replace the old, it arrives to rebuild the man who survived it. After the heartbreak of his first marriage and the near loss of Kevin, Tom Selleck felt like his life had been shaken open. He didn't go looking for love, he didn't expect it. But in 1983, while in London, something gentle found him when he least expected it. A friend suggested he see the musical Cats. He went simply to pass the time, but when he watched the performance, his attention kept drifting to one dancer, Gilly Mack. She wasn't loud or flashy. She had an energy that felt warm, steady, and real. When their eyes met after the show, something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't rushed. It was a quiet recognition, like meeting someone your heart already knows. They began talking, walking through the cool London evenings, sharing thoughts about life, work, and fear. Tom wasn't the famous star yet, and Gilly wasn't impressed by fame anyway. She was drawn to the man beneath the thoughtful, soft-spoken, determined person he truly was. Tom, who had been carrying pain and guilt for so long, found comfort in her presence. She made him feel understood without demanding anything from him. Their connection grew naturally. They didn't rush into anything, but the bond between them strengthened with each conversation. When they decided to marry in 1987, they didn't announce it to the world. They kept it private, small, and quiet. Tom had watched fame put pressure on his first marriage. This time, he protected this love from the spotlight. He wanted something sacred, something safe, something built with intention instead of noise. Soon after their marriage, Tom made a choice that would shape the rest of his life. He bought a ranch in Hidden Valley, a place far from Hollywood's rush, full of open land, fresh air, and silence. The ranch wasn't meant to be a luxury escape. It was meant to be a home where real life could grow. When he first stepped onto the land, he didn't see empty fields. He saw possibility. He saw peace. He saw a place where he and Gilly could build a second life, one rooted in family, not fame. And he didn't hire people to do the work. He did it himself. He dug trenches with his own hands, planted hundreds of trees one by one, and fixed fences under the hot California sun. His hands became rougher, his back sore, but he didn't complain. Hard work on the ranch reminded him of his childhood, of simple values, of the kind of life that kept a man grounded. The land became part of him, and he became part of the land. In 1988, the quiet ranch life grew even sweeter with the birth of his daughter Hannah. Holding her for the first time changed him instantly. He had loved Kevin deeply, but Hannah was born into a chapter where Tom was older, softer, and more aware of how fragile love can be. She was tiny, warm, and perfect in his arms. The moment he looked at her, he felt a promise settle inside him, a promise to protect her, guide her, and never let his work steal time from her life. Hollywood continued to offer him roles. Some were big films that could have boosted his career. Some were projects that would have brought in huge money. But he turned down many of them. He wasn't careless, he was deliberate. He knew what he had almost lost before, and he refused to let history repeat itself. He wanted to be home to watch Hannah grow, to be present for bedtime stories, first words, first steps, and all the small things that fame could never replace. But life has a way of testing love when vulnerability is highest. When Hannah was 3 years old, she suddenly fell very ill. One moment she was running around the ranch laughing, and the next she was too weak to stand. Her breathing became shallow, her body shook, and fear flooded every inch of Tom's heart. He rushed her to the hospital, holding her small hand, whispering that he was right there, even as his voice shook with panic. The hospital lights, the smell of antiseptic, the beeping machines, it all felt like a nightmare. Doctors moved quickly, and their words blurred together. Tom sat beside her bed, refusing to leave even for a moment. He held her hand through the night, watched her chest rise and fall, and prayed silently for her to stay with him. He had survived failures, heartbreak, and disappointment. But this fear of losing his child was something he could barely hold together inside. When doctors confirmed she needed close care and time to recover, Tom didn't hesitate. He walked away from Hollywood just as his career was reaching a high point. He turned down roles worth millions. Scripts sat untouched on his desk. He didn't think twice. His daughter was his priority. He chose hospital rooms over film sets, quiet nights over red carpets, and family over fame. He later said, "I can make another movie. I can't replace time with my daughter." Those words carried the truth of a man who understood the difference between success and meaning. Slowly, with treatment and time, Hannah began to heal. She regained her strength piece by piece. The color returned to her cheeks, her laughter filled the ranch again, and her small footsteps echoed across the land her father had shaped for her. Watching her recover brought a peace so deep it nearly brought Tom to tears. It reminded him that the ranch, the family, and the quiet life he built mattered far more than anything the world could offer. Her recovery felt like sunlight, but the world was not done testing the strength of this family. Hollywood may forget you, but a true craftsman never forgets how to rise again. After stepping back from work to care for his daughter, Tom Selleck returned to an industry that had moved on without him. Many people quietly wondered if his career was fading, if the world still wanted him, or if Magnum P.I. had been his first and last major moment. But Tom wasn't finished. He was just entering another chapter of his long fight to stay relevant in a business that loves youth and forgets quickly. Then came a shock no one expected. In 1987, 3 Men and a Baby was released, and it became the highest-grossing film in America that year. People filled theaters, laughed with the cast, and rediscovered Tom's charm. It wasn't a typical action role, it wasn't Magnum, it was something fresh, funny, warm, and relatable. Audiences loved the chemistry between Tom, Steve Guttenberg, and Ted Danson. The movie pulled in more than $240 million worldwide, and suddenly, Tom was back in the spotlight. This success opened doors for more films. In the early 1990 seconds, he took on roles in Quigley Down Under, Mr. Baseball, and a number of other projects. Each movie tested different sides of his acting. Some were hits, some were not, but every role showed his willingness to grow, adapt, and try new things. Still, the movie industry was changing fast. Younger actors were entering the scene, new trends were emerging, and Tom began to worry quietly that he might be aging out of Hollywood. It's a fear many actors face, the fear of becoming invisible. There were nights he lay awake wondering if the audience would still care, if he still had something left to offer, or if his best years were behind him. Even with experience and success, insecurity can creep in when the phone stops ringing as often. Tom never complained openly, but inside he felt the pressure. He felt the uncertainty. He felt the weight of a career that suddenly seemed fragile. Then, the Jesse Stone series arrived, and it changed everything. Beginning in 2005, Tom took on the role of Jesse Stone, a broken, lonely, deeply human police chief struggling with pain, regret, and alcohol. This was not a charming hero or a confident detective. This was a man carrying emotional wounds. To play Jesse honestly, Tom had to dig deep into feelings he had kept locked away for years. The role demanded vulnerability, stillness, and truth. Some days after filming, he sat in his trailer alone, drained by the emotional intensity of the scenes. The character touched parts of him he didn't usually share with the world. Jesse Stone spoke slowly, thought deeply, and felt everything heavily. Viewers saw a man quietly fighting his demons, and they connected with him. Many people said Tom had never acted better in his life. It wasn't glamorous work. It was real, painful, and honest. Those films reminded the world that Tom wasn't just a TV star. He was an actor with depth. Then, in 2010, came the role that would define the final major chapter of his career. Frank Reagan in Blue Bloods. At age 65, an age when many actors struggle to find steady work, Tom stepped into a role that placed the entire weight of a long-running show on his shoulders. Blue Bloods wasn't a small project. It required strong leadership, emotional maturity, and consistency. Tom became the center of a cast that looked to him the same way viewers had always looked to him, with respect. Frank Reagan wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He led with calm strength, fairness, and moral clarity. Audiences loved him because he reminded them of someone they wished they had in their own lives: steady, honest, and quietly powerful. The show became a huge success, lasting 14 seasons. Week after week, year after year, Tom showed up on set before dawn, learned his lines carefully, and carried himself like the leader everyone looked up to. His work ethic never faded. Even as his body felt the years more intensely, the schedule was demanding. Long days, heavy scenes, emotional storylines, and the pressure of keeping the show grounded. His knees hurt from decades of stunts and physical work. His back stiffened after cold nights. Sometimes he had to pause before standing up. Yet he kept going, pushing himself through discomfort because he believed in the work and in the people around him. Many of the cast members said Tom set the tone for the entire show. He worked with discipline, showed kindness to everyone, and never let anyone see how much pain he was in unless it was absolutely unavoidable. For 14 years, he carried the weight of Blue Bloods with a sense of honor. He treated the job like a duty, not a privilege. Fans watched him age on screen with dignity, wisdom, and strength. The role brought him stability again, financially and emotionally. It gave him purpose through his late 60 seconds and early 70 seconds. It allowed him to leave a second powerful mark on American television. But every chapter must end. By the time the show reached its final seasons, his body was slowing down. Early mornings felt heavier. Long scenes required more concentration. Age was becoming a quiet opponent he couldn't ignore. And even though he continued with the same dedication he always had, time was catching him gently but firmly by the shoulders. When Blue Bloods finally ended, it closed a major part of his life. The set that had felt like home was gone. The routine that had shaped more than a decade suddenly disappeared. The silence afterward felt strange. It wasn't failure. It wasn't regret. It was simply the end of a long journey, one filled with pride, sacrifice, and years of effort that few people truly understood. But even the strongest pillars eventually tremble, and the end of Blue Bloods brought a silence he could not outrun. A man can. To survive Hollywood, but it is the land he loves that can bring him to his knees. Long before cameras and scripts shaped his days, Tom Selleck had placed his heart into the soil of his Hidden Valley ranch. It wasn't just property. It was the story of who he had become. The wide fields, the wooden fences he repaired with his own hands, the orchards he planted tree by tree, the stables where horses breathed warm air into cold mornings. Every inch of that land carried a piece of his life. The tractors, covered in dust, the old tools, the smell of fresh hay, the quiet evenings with crickets singing, All of it was his autobiography written on earth instead of paper. That ranch was where he found peace when fame grew loud. It was where he raised his daughter, where he walked beside his wife, where he built a world away from Hollywood's fast pace. The land asked for work every day, and he gave it. Sunrise to sunset, he watered trees, fixed irrigation lines, checked on horses, and cleared pastures. It was not easy, but it grounded him. It reminded him of simple values: patience, effort, responsibility. But in 2015, something happened that shook him in a way he had never experienced. California was suffering from a severe drought, and water use became a public issue. One morning, headlines exploded claiming Tom Selleck was stealing water for his ranch. The story spread fast. Reporters crowded the entrance, helicopters flew overhead, and strangers accused him without knowing the facts. For a man who had spent his entire life working with honesty, it felt like a knife to the chest. He wasn't the type to hold press conferences or fight loudly. He believed in handling problems quietly. So he settled the dispute quickly and respectfully. Even though much of the narrative had been exaggerated or misunderstood, he didn't shout back or complain. He chose dignity over drama. But the damage hurt. It felt humiliating to be judged by people who didn't know him, to have the sanctuary turned into a headline, to watch his hard work reduced to a rumor. It left a wound that stayed with him for years, a quiet reminder that no matter how honest you live, the world can turn on you in an instant. Life continued, and he focused again on the ranch and his work. But in 2018, something happened that reopened an older, deeper fear. His daughter Hannah, who had grown into a strong and skilled equestrian, suffered a devastating accident during a competition. Her horse misstepped, and she fell hard. The stirrup failed to release, and the impact broke her in two places. For a brief moment, the world seemed to stop. Tom felt the same terror he once felt with Kevin decades earlier. The shock, the helplessness, the fear of losing a child. All of it came rushing back with painful force. He reached her side as fast as he could. Seeing her on the ground, in pain, hit him so deeply that words couldn't form. The hospital became his home again. He sat beside her during surgeries, held her hand through therapy, and watched her fight to walk, move, and ride again. He stayed quiet, steady, and present, just as he always had during life's hardest moments. Every step she took during recovery felt like a blessing to him. Every small improvement felt like a gift. Watching her heal reminded him how fragile life is and how quickly everything can change. Through those years, Blue Bloods kept him working, giving him stability and purpose. But when the show ended in 2024, something heavier than grief settled on his shoulders. For 14 years, he had a steady paycheck that helped him support the ranch. Now that income was gone, and the ranch did not care about his age, his Hollywood career, or the awards he had earned. It needed money. It needed labor. It needed someone strong enough to keep it alive. At 80, his body couldn't work the way it once did. Knees hurt before he even stepped outside. His back stiffened when he lifted anything heavy. Even walking across the pasture took more effort. He still woke early, still tried to do what he could, but there were days when he had to pause halfway, breathe slowly, and gather strength before continuing. Age was no longer something he could push aside. It was becoming a daily reality. The ranch expenses grew: workers, feed, water systems, repairs, equipment. Everything cost more. Without a regular salary, Tom worried quietly about the future. He never said it publicly, but a fear settled in him. The fear of someday not being able to protect the land that had protected him. The ranch wasn't just property. It was memory. It was family. It was the center of his life. The idea of losing it felt like losing a part of himself. He thought about the trees he planted decades ago and wondered who would water them when he no longer could. He looked at the stables where Hannah used to laugh as a little girl and wondered who would care for the horses when he was gone. He stood on the porch at sunset, watching the hills turn gold, and felt the weight of time pressing against him in a way he had never felt before. The world knew him as a strong, steady figure, someone who handled everything without breaking. But inside, he wrestled with questions no one else could answer. How long could he keep going? How long could he carry this land? How much time did he have left to protect the legacy he had built? He had survived Hollywood's pressures, judgment, and demands. But aging, uncertainty, and the fear of losing the place he loved, these were battles he felt alone. And as the world quieted around him, one final truth emerged, one that would redefine the last chapter of his life. A lifetime of storms leads to one final horizon: peace, if a man has earned it. At 80 years old, Tom Selleck now lives with a body that no longer moves with the strength it once had. His knees ache before he even leaves the bed. His back reminds him of every stunt he ever did, every fall he ever took, and every morning on set when he pushed through pain because the show needed him. He walks slower now, takes careful steps, and sits down gently instead of quickly. Age has changed his rhythm, but it has not taken away the quiet strength he carries inside. He has learned to respect his limits, to take breaks when he must, and to accept the truth that every man reaches a point where the body slows, even if the heart still wants to keep going. The ranch he bought decades ago has grown in value to nearly $45 million, not because he wanted it to be an investment, but because of the land itself. Hidden Valley became a desirable location, and the work he put into the ranch helped increase its worth. The orchards he planted, the stables he built, the trails he cleared, all of it added meaning long before it added financial value. But Tom doesn't look at the ranch as money. When he looks at it, he sees memories. He sees Hannah riding her first pony. He sees the early mornings when he stood with a cup of coffee watching fog drift off the hills. He sees the sweat he poured into the soil and the love that grew from it. Around the property are vehicles and tools that hold more meaning than their appearance suggests. There is the old pickup truck he still refuses to replace, even though it rattles when it starts. There is the classic Cadillac he keeps because it reminds him of a different time in his life. The dusty Jeeps have carried him across more sunrises than he could count. The tractors show the marks of work, not decoration. The tools in the shed, rusted, worn, and used, tell the story of a man who built his life with his hands as much as he built it with his acting. Throughout his career, and even more as he aged, Tom gave quietly to causes that mattered to him. He supported veteran programs because he knew what service meant. He helped law enforcement support groups because he respected their work. He donated to children's charities because he knew the value of helping families during their hardest moments. He also supported horse rescues and equestrian programs, partly for Hannah, partly for the deep bond he felt with the animals on his ranch. He never announced these donations publicly. He didn't want applause. He gave because giving felt right. Kevin, the boy he had loved from his first marriage, grew into a grounded and private man. Their bond did not disappear after the divorce. It simply changed shape. Kevin took a quieter path in life, and Tom respected that. Hannah grew into the talented equestrian he always believed she would become. She competes, trains, and now helps manage parts of the ranch. Tom watches her with quiet pride, knowing she fights her battles with the same determination she showed as a child recovering from illness and as a young woman healing from her accident. Through every stage of his life, Jilly remained a steady companion. They shared simple routines, small jokes, and years of quiet support. Their marriage lasted not because it was perfect, but because they protected it from the noise of the world. They built a home that didn't depend on fame, and they learned how to stay connected even when life got heavy. One of the most sacred parts of Tom's day is his morning routine on the ranch. Before the sun fully rises, he steps out onto the porch with a sweater on his shoulders and a mug of warm coffee in his hands. The air is cool, the light is soft, and the world feels peaceful. He listens to the sound of horses in the distance, the wind moving through the trees, and the quiet rustle of nature waking up. In those moments, he feels grateful. Grateful that he lived long enough to enjoy mornings without rushing to a set. Grateful to have peace after decades of long workdays. Grateful that his family is near. Grateful that he survived storms that could have broken him. He no longer chases roles or waits for scripts. Fame does not interest him. He has had enough of bright lights and non-stop schedules. What he wants now is calm. He wants the comfort of family dinners, evenings with Jilly, and weekends watching Hannah ride. He wants the freedom to enjoy sunsets without thinking about early call times. He wants the quiet life he spent years building, one small choice at a time. When he reflects on his life, he does not think first of the money he earned or the shows he starred in. He thinks of the moments that shaped him. The long days filming Magnum P.I., the heartbreak of losing a marriage, the fear of Kevin's fall, the gentle love he found with Jilly, the miracle of Hannah healing, the pride of carrying Blue Bloods for 14 seasons, the weight of the ranch after the drought accusations, the fear of aging, the strength to keep going anyway. He understands something now that he didn't understand when he was young. A meaningful life is not built from fame, success, or applause. It is built from quiet devotion, the love you protect, the responsibilities you carry, and the peace you allow yourself to find after long years of struggle. His legacy is not just his career, it is the honesty with which he lived. It is the family he cared for. It is the land he shaped. It is the respect he earned from viewers who saw in him a man who stood steady no matter what life placed in front of him. As he moves through these final chapters, he does so with gratitude, humility, and a calm acceptance of what life has become. He knows he has done enough. He knows he has lived fully. He knows he has earned his rest. But before we close this story, one question remains, one that only you can answer.